Welcome back again to continue from where we stopped yesterday. Today we are going to implement our authentication system because in all instances we should require someone to be authenticated in order for them to access our dashboard. So that's what we're going to do today, and we're going to have to protect the back-end admin access. So what you're going to do is first and foremost, you said I forgot to explain the reason why in production we require the Cloudflare ID, the Cloudflare database ID, and then the Cloudflare token in general. It's not specific, but yeah, the Cloudflare D1 token in general. So let's copy this and add it to our, either we can add it to the environment env, or we can just use .div.vars. Since this is what Cloudflare uses, for now we shall put it as empty. As well as our we shall also add this. We should also add the Cloudflare D1, the Cloudflare database ID, which is basically the ID that is this. You copy this and add it here. So then the last one is the token itself. A token itself. How do you get this? Basically you have to head into your Cloudflare account, go to manage account, go to account API tokens, and then just a minute, let me refresh this since it has been off. In order to get these values, the account ID and then the Cloudflare D1 API token, the database ID is got from your Angular database, which is this ID here. So let's wait for that to refresh. Hopefully it's done. So you come to create token, and then come down to custom token and get started with custom token. Give it any name that you want, anything, and then account, which is what we're getting to, and then we shall look for D1 and select D1, select read, then add another one, D1, then select write as well, and the rest you can leave blank. The rest just leave them as blank as they are, and then you can create the summary. Create the summary and it will generate for you the token. I won't be doing that right now since I already have this done for me, and I don't really need to repeat that again. I don't want to do that again because of some security issues that I've not yet figured out how to deal with, so I won't be showing you that. And for a preview, so I think that's all for that. So let's go back. So for our since this is done all locally, I personally already finished adding my my variables to my variable secrets. I added it here so just to protect my Cloudflare ID and then the token that I'm adding there. So that's why I did everything earlier up front before demonstrating that, because I didn't want to leak out my ID, account ID, and then also the the API token itself. So we're going to use some So I've not yet used this because I wanted to use Firebase's structure. Firebase has a nice structure when it comes to authentication. I've not yet seen any authentication system that has a nice structure like how Firebase has its structure. But there is an option called Beta Auth that I did find out. It has a lot of integration. It has Apple, GitHub, Google, and many others, and it also has different databases that it supports. And then it has phone auth, anonymous username, two-factor authentication, email OTP, and so on. And I'm not yet certain because I've never really used any of this. I'm not certain of how this is done and how it's integrated. But I think we should use that instead. Though the problem comes is our get database is asynchronous. That means when we are implementing it, it might become an issue, and we will have to remove the user part of it. So I'm going to head, so here's the documentation, you can follow that, but I found that Hono X, let's have an example which we could follow instead of following the documentations from Beta Auth itself for the beginning, because I've never really used this. So I'm just attempting, if everything fails, we shall go back to making our own authentication system from scratch. So what we're going to do is come down here, integrations. I can see, okay, here it is, Beta Auth and Cloudflare. And since we're using PNPM, that's what we're going to rely on for now. I'm going to head, let's see, it requires installing Drizzle, which we already did that. It requires us to install Beta Auth, which we can reference both documents, and here it is. Copy this, and let me open another tab for my terminal and add Beta Auth. And then it will require us to have this generated for us. So let's use this for the meanwhile time. It's not a secure one, obviously you'll need to change it. And okay, what else? Neon. I don't know why it requires neon, but let's continue without adding neon to it. So Beta Auth URL, this is Beta Auth secret, which you already have. Let's copy this as well. I think this is going to be our local host. Not yet certain about that, but we shall see that. Localhost 3000, that's what we're using. Confirm that, localhost 3000. It should match the host that you're using, 3000. You can change this by adding, when you're running div, you can add slash. Let's close this so we can demonstrate that as well. You can add /p, then put in the port that you want to use, and it will use that port, so it changes the port. But I prefer the default 3000, which is quite better for me. And so Beta Auth URL done. Then Wrangler, after setting up the environment, run the Wrangler script, generate the types, which obviously that we can do by cfgen, which we already have in our script. We already have cfgen itself available, and we don't need to do that, that's already done. in our types since we installed from open Next itself. It sets that up for us easily. So what next? This is done almost. Use Drizzle kit CLI and following the Drizzle configuration, blah blah blah. We already have this set up for us. We already have this set up, and here it is. We set up everything. And what next? Now, beta auth instance. Create a beta auth instance using Cloudflare workers binding. There are many available configuration options. Far more than can be covered in an example. Please refer to the official documentations and configure it according to the project's needs. Okay, for now I think we shall follow this one. So here, source lib beta auth index, source lib beta auth. Okay, I think for our case, let's set it up here rather under utils. We can put it as beta auth ts and no, let's call it just auth ts, auth.ts, and copy that example, paste it here, as well as this, just so it iterates it directly for us here. Okay, remove that, remove neon. Yep, our base is that. Our application is called Ferrous. Okay, you can put it as capital letters. It's called Ferrous, and you can add more options right here, or you can do everything from here without having to. You can still do based on how it looks like. Seems like you can do everything right here. And base path has that. So we can remove this so that it doesn't really overcrowd our. Now Cloudflare binding, which we don't have this kind here because we have it's called Cloudflare environment env. That's what we have, and it's db1, but since we already have our own we have our own Drizzle that is set up by us, we can go as const get database. Let's see, because when you go here to database is get database. And it has to be an await. It has to be asynchronous, which is an await. And okay, we might have forgotten to export it itself. Export. Yep, and there we go. And here now it should import it correctly. And there we have, so we don't really need this anymore. And how did we define it? It's db. We defined it as db, and the other part is our environment. So this should work. If I'm not wrong, we should have SQLite. Drizzle SQLite. So we have better auth URL and better auth secret, which we have already provided in our DV, our vars here and this one, and it's quite available. And the reason we can easily access it as string is because we defined our globals.ts and created a declaration into it. So remove this. Okay, it seems it's going to be easy for us to implement this, but before we can celebrate, let's confirm everything works as described. And here we go. So we are required to run this to create for us a scheme. To create for us our schema. So let's see if we have everything correct. Do we have better auth.config? So what we built was that, and now required for the tables. So let's create also the better auth config. What does it have exactly in it? Kind of looks similar to what we already did to this. But it might be something different. I'm not really concentrating much on it, but so copy it as it is and paste it there. See, everything we have here is correctly done, and I prefer SQL. Drizzle, better auth itself, neon, just a minute. Since our get database is asynchronous, sorry for that, it would be in our best interest to actually have the provision for it to get an asynchronous structure here. Okay, I think using the other option would have been much better, but it's fine for us to use this for now. Just define it as that. Copy this. And paste it there. But also, since we already have our env in here, we don't really need to repeat that again, since we already pass it here. So we can remove the definition from above there, and as well do this here. Add that, and let's import this as well. So env same as this, and database SQL. Yep, this should work just fine. Okay, now we have that output. So our output is under server schema. So it's instead of source server schema index. Should run that. See? So as we wait for that to run, let's see, apply to a database. So generating it. Okay, we already have this defined. And then we mount this. We do have to mount that. Okay. Now let's go back here to our API as the other one built. And something I've noticed is we do need to const app inside it. We shall return Hono itself, the Hono app, the Hono instance. We shall return that Hono instance. Now the reason I'm doing this is, see, so the reason I'm doing this is because we need to pass our environment to our API so that it's globally accessible. Just like here, we need to pass our binding to it. So in order for us to do that, I need to actually initialize it inside here and pass it through and wait. Get database from server, and since it's asynchronous, which is going to be an issue, I'm not certain if this will work because asynchronous tend to. Let's see if it works. So we add this here. Our binding has to be here. So binding. But okay, yeah, this is correctly done. Though we could have defined it right here for Cloudflare. Why is this having an issue? Anyway, I'll figure that out later. We can leave it as it is for now. We can leave it as is for now, and we can figure that out later. But I think this should work fine. Yep, it's working just fine without a single issue at the moment. So this is our base and so on. But as well, we shall have to define this for other APIs that we are going to use here. So we shall create it as a hook. Use Hono.ts and async function. Import our environment, await it, and get database, and have a return here. And let's now create our new instance for a Hono. Instance, which is new Hono, because we are going to define our own routes for Hono, and in order to define the routes and use them on the other side, you need to define the Hono itself. You need to define a new Hono instance for it. And here we have Hono. And we shall reuse this for our other APIs that we are going to implement from this server directory that we have, and then we can reuse it here by defining app.route and defining a path for the route. We shall define the path as API itself, and then we can call our instance for that API here, or something like that. So let's see. Okay, this seems to fail for some weird reason. Out of memory. That means it's not capturing the database itself. And see, let's try again. Drizzle, that provider, that, because I'm not using Postgres. Yeah. Maybe this could be the issue. Try to remove that and try to run that again. And we do have the same issue again. Try this again. Maybe because we are defining schema this way. So let's carry it and drop it here on the database and try to follow it based on that step. I've never really used this, so I've never used most of these third-party auth, so it's not my strongest suit. If all this fails, I think we shall create our own structure for ourselves, because I don't want to go around dealing with something that doesn't work. Okay, this seems to I don't know why it seems to remove. Okay, we have schema there. Now, going back to this, so the best path is API. Let's try to have it as well get async, get the non-async database, and just cookie that we need. Let's try to use the non-asynchronous get context so that we can export it as is. Come on. So if this fails to work as well, I think I'm going to have to do a little bit of research, and if that research doesn't come up with anything useful, then we're going to have to create our own. So remove this. Let's try this. If it will work, which I doubt, because I doubt this working, to be honest. Okay, let's try this. But I tried running it. I think we probably do have it defined in our runtime. Yes, we do have it defined. So what am I missing here? Let's try that again once more, then we can put it inside. That failed again, same error. Let's try let's try this again like this. And there we go. Same issue. So I think this won't work at all. I'm either doing something wrong or it won't work at all. Let's try to follow the example because I may be the one that is in the wrong here, and I'm trying my best to be correct. And also I think there's also reference from the example itself, database. Here we go. If this doesn't work, we're going with option A, where we build our own auth structure, because I can't seem to get this to work for some reason. Oh, okay. Oh, that's interesting. Nav. So, in simple terms, I was the one doing things wrongly. It's not better auth to blame here. So I might have been doing something wrongly. And to my understanding, I think it comes down to this. Rather than using get Cloudflare from Open Next, we could just use process to, since we already generated it, to pass that to us. And so this really becomes unnecessary for us to have this. We could still have this, but It seems that we don't really have a need for this, but I'll keep it here for the meanwhile time because we already have this defined. The use Hono hook that we already defined. But before we can confirm it's working, we also need to test out that it's actually working, because I doubt certain parts of what I defined as correct to be correct. And we have the table, we have email, images. Okay, this seems interesting enough. Anyone? So we do the same here, because it seems more like beta auth is not really connected to the project itself in order for it to access get the instance of our instance itself, but then this worries me a little bit. Anyway, it doesn't worry me a lot. So email and password enabled to true, and well, okay, this seems quite interesting that it worked. So now up next is, I think, structuring our code itself, since we have most of this now working. And now I think let's follow the correct documentations after all that fiasco. And the correct documentations, let's see. And I think since everything is already generated, all we have to do when it comes to this part is point the correct schema to it, and we can import schema from schema. Okay, so since it's defined by it, which is the correct ones, user to users, I would prefer users rather than user. Okay, let's not stress everything up, and just leave it as is. Ignore. Let's wait. I like kind of it being this way, so this is fine with me. Okay, so I think we have this done for us correctly. And what next? Now we shall define other parts of it that we need. So first and foremost, I think let's just push the table for the sake of pushing it. And here pnp db gen. Oh yeah, so since we changed our db form scheme.index to db.scheme, we definitely do need to as well redefine our Drizzle, the Drizzle path of the schema to be db, to be server db slash schema .ts, which when we generate it should work. Since I already had a table, I just it was users, so I renamed it to user, and instead of uid, rename uid to that, and the rest as follows. So pnp db slash local. So let's also send it to our Wrangler local, Wrangler, whatever that is. Also defined it there. So that we can see how our table looks like, and then we shall head into defining what kind of authentications we need. We should definitely require email and password. And then we shall have Google and GitHub, because we shall also implement some bit of marketing part of it, like e-commerce structure to it, in order for us to say have a little bit of marketing in our system. And yes, fine, that's done. pnp db studio, yeah, that's the correct one. Run this. For right now, we are not yet pushing it to our remote table, which is already available, because our remote table is right here. We are using D1 database SQL, so we have pushed nothing to it since it's not yet being implemented or used at all, but we shall be doing that soon. So we have session, we have user, we have verification. So this is our table, and we also have account right here. So I think let's start from here in the next video, so that this video is not prolonged and we can start from here. I mean, we can start from this point later on. So we shall be implementing, we shall be in the next video we shall be adding in the email auth. We shall definitely add Google and also GitHub, and we shall also implement let's see, two-factor authentication would be an interesting thing to implement. We can also implement username. I also like it when the user can log in with either the username or their email. And we shall also need phone number, which this is going to be an interesting one because anyway, we shall figure that out. Email verification, and then passkey, that would also be an interesting one. Not really interested in one tab, and then yeah, not interested in that, though I think it would be reasonable enough that we implement the API itself for auth. We get it implemented here. And okay, so it's picking from libs, so let's do the same with that. So we are already in API, so all we need is this, and here auth, what's that? What does auth require? Probably something I'm missing, but oh, I get what I'm missing. So in the previous video, in the previous part of the code that we had passed env to it from there, so it was being passed from the instance up there. So let's actually pass it there. I think it's a good practice to actually do this and pass that there. And for this, I think we can keep it as is, or else we could actually const db in order. Okay, I think it's fine off, because I mean, so we have this here, and that goes on well. It seems to have handler here, which I don't know why it's not working. So I think we shall follow the documentations to integrate that, because here is Hono. auth handler. And sure, we don't need to add crons to it. Okay, for now okay, I think we shall figure this out in our next part of the video, so this video is not quite too long for me to deal with uploading. So I'll remove this for now, and I think I'll figure out why this is not working, and I'll come back with a more succinct answer to why that didn't work. So we're going to close this as well as this. I'm not going to upload this, like I'm not going to push this since, okay, let me push it to GitHub so that you can reference from there. What else did we do? Better auth. Yeah, see you in the next